Welcome to the Unitarian Church of Lincoln on this Sunday morning. My name is the Reverend Dr. Oscar Sinclair. I am proud and thankful to be the minister of this congregation. This morning I am joined by our worship associate, Mary Kay Stillwell. Over the last several years, our congregational life has often changed. Sometimes we've met here in person, sometimes we've met on Zoom. We have people who come here every Sunday. We have people who come here once a year. We have people who watch every Tuesday afternoon on our recorded YouTube channel. But whoever you are, wherever you are on life's journey, whenever you are seeing this, you are welcome here with us. We are so glad to be together and to have you a part of this community. We say here that the Unitarian Church of Lincoln aspires to be a loving community, uniting reason with spiritual exploration to transform ourselves and transform the world. That is a big job that we have set out for ourselves every time we gather and in the times in between. So my ask for you this morning is the same as it is many mornings. If this is a place that has been transformational for you, don't hide that fact. When you're out in the world, tell people. If you're on Facebook, say, I just went to the Unitarian Church of Lincoln and they did this incredible thing on Sunday morning. We will not transform the world if people do not know that we are here. And so we need to tell them sometimes. But for now, we'll put that aside and be present with each other, with these people, for this hour. This morning is our annual All Souls service where we recognize members and friends of this congregation who have died in the last year. That is sometimes a heavy service. So if at any time you need to get up, go out to the gallery, get some water, and come back in, take care of yourself first, and we will be here. All right, with that, we will begin with a chalice lighting from our worship associate, Mary Kay Stillwell.
Good morning. Our chalice lighting this morning is This Sacred Thread by Heather Januels. They once dwelled among us, the people of memory, they who knew us, they who taught us, they who heard us, they who loved us. They touch our lives time and again through their presence and their absence, through familiar scents and favorite songs, through old stories and renewed sorrow. As the earth turns and leaves fall, we reach back to renew the bonds between us. With hearts and hands open, we hold on to love ever stronger than death. We reach back in gratitude and understanding. Without our time together, the pain and joy, we would never be who we are today. We would have little to pass on to ourselves. We would have little to pass on ourselves. Without fear, with thanksgiving, and with hope for all that awaits, we remember those who have gone before. We honor the circle of life and of death. And we place within, and our own place within the sacred thread. And our first hymn this morning is Bright Morning Stars, number 357. Please stand and we'll sing together.
like to invite anyone forward who'd like to see the pictures a little better for the story. Yes, I am taller than this microphone. A couple of weeks ago, I attended the Loretta Conference, which is a gathering of liberal religious educators. I was fortunate to attend a workshop with the Reverend Tandy Rogers. And seeing her again reminded me of a workshop which I had attended a number of years ago where she introduced us to her ancestor dolls. You see those on the screen there. Tandy creates figures that she keeps on her desk. And depending on what she's doing in the day and who she may need to carry with her, she'll choose an ancestor doll and bring them along with her. For example, if she's needing courage to speak her truth and stand up for what she believes in, she might bring along Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Or if she's needing inspiration for working with children, she might bring along UU religious educator Sophia Lyon-Foss. Today, I thought I would do a bit of reflecting on some of the ancestors in my own life. My great-grandmother's name was Rose, but we called her Gigi. My great-grandfather, Avram, or Abraham, was known as Pop to us. There they are. That's the most common picture that floats around in our family. I was incredibly fortunate in that I was able to get to know them quite a bit into my teenage years. Gigi died when I was 18. And Pop passed away within a year when I was 19 years old. We always said that he couldn't live without her. They were the sweetest couple and showed me a lot about love, what I hope to have for myself and what I hope to show my children about what love means in a family. They lived in Leisure World, Seal Beach, California, a gated community of 9,000 residents who are 50 plus years old. One of the last memories I have of them in their home was when we were hanging out on an afternoon and Pop was in the TV room watching In the Heat of the Night, a crime show, and Gigi was in the kitchen painting her nails, something that she did regularly. It was nearly impossible to ever catch her without color on her fingers. Pop was yelling from the other room, "Rose, bring me some fruit!" And she was chatting with me and ignoring him pretty blatantly. Another call came from the TV room, this time a bit louder. "Rose, bring me some fruit!" Gigi would yell back, "Eh?" as if she didn't hear him. Silence for a few minutes. Another, "Rose!" This went back and forth between them for about 40 or so minutes when she finally caved. Grabbing a peach and a spoon from the kitchen, Gigi went into the TV room and sat on Pop's lap. He didn't take his eyes off the screen as she took a spoonful of fruit and fed him while he continued with his show. This is a picture of their engagement. Pop had a fantastic sense of humor, and he passed that humor along to many other folks in our family as well. One of my most favorite photos of him is one where he has a Christmas present bow on top of his head and a look of surprise on his face. Pop loved his car. He actually loved his car so much that he insisted on being buried in his car one day, to the point where the family actually had to humor his request while he was alive and convince him, "Oh, sure, yeah, this is a possibility," which was absolutely not going to happen. He was devastated when the day came that the family talked to him about not driving anymore. But he had one glass eye and was narcoleptic, and he'd fall asleep sometimes while driving for a moment in Southern California. But one eye would remain open. It was really pretty terrifying. He loved messing with people, though, and when there were young children in the family, he would sometimes turn around and knock both his eye and his fake teeth out and exclaim to the kid, "Look what you did to me." He found it quite hilarious. One day I was at their place washing my face in the bathroom, and instead of reaching for the soap, I accidentally grabbed his dentures, his fake teeth. I remember his big, bright smile and laughing so hard at my misfortune and utter freak out, a prank that he no doubtedly would have happily played on me himself. He taught us how to play Yiddish card games like Pisha Pesha. And I remember sitting in their dining room for hours playing along with my brother Danny, playing with the both of them. He was so patient with us. See, this is a picture of them sitting with me. I was probably 4 years old, if I had to guess. Gigi loved to sing. For their 50th anniversary, she took the stage to sing Summertime a la Ella Fitzgerald at their community center. In true pop fashion, he grabbed a broom and started sweeping behind her on the stage for a laugh, and then took her hand and they danced together. She had the biggest heart. She was an excellent baker. I particularly loved her cookies, and she gave incredible hugs. What I remember most about Gigi was her warmth. She radiated love for her family. I remember sitting next to her at an outdoor performance at the community amphitheater, her arm wrapping around me when I got chilly. She offered me her wool sweater, which I now have. Sitting on the pillows that they'd bring along for the cold, hard seats. Her kissing me on top of my head, or kepala, kepi, the Yiddish word. When she started to not feel well toward the end of her days, my mom called me to let me know that I should reach out to her if I had anything that I wanted to say. So I wrote her a letter. I was 18, and there were no children anywhere in my near future, but I told her that one day, if I ever had a daughter, that I would want my daughter to carry forth her name, to carry with her the warmth of and love held within the name Rose, which is now my daughter Mira's middle name. The letter arrived at the nursing home the day that she died. She never got to read the letter. However, the letter was placed on the kitchen table for Pop, and he read it the day afterwards, and even though he had just lost the love of his life, I am told that he lit up and announced to any staff person at the home how proud he was that one day his great-granddaughter would name a future child after his wife. Aw, Eilish said. Something I did brought him a smile on an otherwise gloomy day, and that's all I could possibly hope for. My son Logan's Hebrew name is Avram, after Pop, although I never got to tell him that. And my brother's son is Abraham, after him. And although not my biological grandparents, when I think of ancestors, I also remember chosen grandparents who have passed. Lois and Alan Hansen, who many of you might remember from the church here, as well as Charles Stephen, among others. And just this last Friday, Edna Johnson, my grandmother-in-law, who joined the realm of ancestors as well. Chosen family, family by marriage, or ancestors we admire and hold with us by imagined connection, and the stories they hold in our lives are also incredibly important. Lois and Alan took my family in for about 4 months in their basement while my mom looked for a new home for us. Charles accepted me along with the rest of his crew because I tagged along with his biological granddaughter, Sarah, most of the time. So we would run amok in this church. And Edna, who will be remembered for her legacy of kindness. This month, I am particularly reminded of my Pop because Halloween, October 31st, was Pop's birthday. So in 2 days, the tradition in my family is that we light a candle in remembrance of him and my great-grandmother. Their memories live on within our stories. And although I don't carry along ancestor dolls with me, I know that I certainly invoke my ancestors during various important times in my life. Today, I'm wearing my great-grandmother's ring, which we're pretty sure was her engagement ring. And I've also got Lois Hansen's earrings on. Whenever the time came that we had to leave my great-grandparents' house, Gigi used to say, "Don't say goodbye. Say so long for now." The hope being that we'd always get one last time together. Little did she know how much I'd carry her with me always. So with that, I will conclude by saying something that I almost always say, and say it if you know it, and that is the end of our story. So, as we hear our next song by guest musicians, the children are dismissed to their classrooms. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jason Slaughter. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees. I want to offer a special welcome to those who are visiting for the first time or viewing online for the first time. So thank you for engaging with us here today. We have a couple announcements. So today, save the dates, November 12th through November 19th, for the Second Chance auction. Today, after the service, there will be a table in the gallery. Karen and Barbara can answer questions you may have. It is not too late to sign up. Next Saturday, which hopefully will be a lot warmer, November, here on, what is that going to be, November 5th, 4th? At 8:30 a.m., we need a handful of volunteers to help with the grounds project. Come help us restore the stone drainage near the path into the playground. It will be a lot of fun. If you have any questions, please check in with the church office. All right. Now, as a central part of our services is the time we join together as a community to mark the moments of our lives. We share with one another our joys, our sorrows, the events that mark the steps of our own journeys. The threads of sorrow and those of joy are intertwined in the fabric of our lives, present for all, remembered by all. We share those threads, and they are woven together with those of others in our community. Our joys are shared and magnified, and we are comforted in our sorrows. I invite you now, if you're online, to type in the chat, or if you're here, please speak openly and loudly so I can hear you into this shared space to share your name or the name of another you wish to be remembered in sorrow. Vera. We hear Vera.
My great-grandmother Laverne Payne.
Your great-grandmother Laverne Payne.
My former friend Michael B. Dow. He preached in Unitarian churches. He passed away on October the 7th, suddenly, at an early age. And you go to posttube.com to read about his legacy.
Your friend's name was Mike Dow. Michael B. Dow.
So,
Thank you for sharing that. David. The family of Jim Kirshner. Laura Lee.
Jeremy Patterson passed away. His service was yesterday. Thinking about his 3 young children, especially.
Jeremy Patterson, who passed away, and we're thinking of his family and his children. Nothing's been typed in the chat. I'm making sure. Yep. So now, I invite you to type in the chat if you're online on our YouTube stream, or share again into the share space of your name or the name of another you wish to be remembered in joy. Betty. Lynn.
My friend Dr. Gavisa was given the Presidential Award for Science recently.
Your friend who's a Dr. Gabisa, who was just honored with a Presidential Award for Science. Allison. I'm sorry? Garment? Connor. Thank you so much. We have a joy in the chat from Amy Miller. So much kind help, and after my ankle surgery on Friday. So we know too that there are some joys, some sorrows that are yet unspoken, but still deeply felt. Let us hold a moment of silence for everything unspoken. Thank you for your presence. Now please remain seated and join me in singing, and I forgot to bring it up here, our next hymn. Let me, someone have it real quick, I apologize. Hymn 31. It'll be up here on the screen for us to view and read, but if you have your hymnals, go ahead and sing with us. Bill?
Each year at the spring congregational meeting, our members vote for 10 organizations for our Share the Plate. The Share the Plate recipient for October 2023 is the Indian Center. Please welcome John Yoakum, a member of the board of the Lincoln Indian Center, who will tell us more about their important work.
Good morning. And thank you. I've been involved with the Indian Center for a number of years. I've been on the board for almost 2 years now. As many of you know, about 5 years ago, the Indian Center had some management problems and pretty much closed the doors. A small group dedicated volunteers stuck together now we're back. Many hard work, many hours came together, and now we're back kind of on our feet. We recently were able to hire Executive Director Steve Larvey. I think this young man will do some dynamic things in the future. We're starting to have some programmings coming forth. Regalia classes and some other classes, cultural competent classes. In the future, we're hoping to do more services with our elders, and your donations this month will help be the seed money for the elders program. So coming forward, next year will be the Indian Center's 50th year. So we're planning some big events to celebrate 50 years in the community. The Indian Center started almost 50 years ago. The Lincoln Indian Center is not a tribal organization. It serves all the tribes in our community. So just a really wonderful place to get together and celebrate being in the community. So thank you again for your donations.
Thanks so much, John, for being with us today. I know you stepped in last minute when Samantha Plentychief became ill and couldn't join us, so thanks, a special thanks to you. As a reminder, we will give the Lincoln Indian Center any loose cash and any checks with Share the Plate written on the memo line. You might also consider text giving. Simply text UC Lincoln and the amount you wish to give to 73256. 73256. You'd think I have that memorized by now. As the music plays, will the ushers please come forward to receive the offering? Guest music now.
I think we're having some technical difficulties, so we'll just skip this guest music and keep going with the service.
The reading today is Prayer of Remembrance by Reverend Lori Walk. Holy One, on this day of remembrance, we say aloud their names again, the names of those who died this year. Died, the word is jarring. So jarring that we hardly use the word, substituting euphemisms that are a bit more vague. Sometimes we say people are lost when what we mean is dead. We lost so-and-so this year. But the people who die are not lost. They are not misplaced. We did not just lose sight of them. Nor did they wander off. They died, and it is as final as the word sounds. But that is, of course, why we don't say they died. When people die, they do not just disappear and we continue on. There is no such thing as out of sight, out of mind. There is no switch to flip to turn off our feelings. The person may not be lost, but we are at a loss for words, for normalcy, for what was, what could have been. And grief is such an unwieldy thing. We are fine 1 minute, years even, and then the deep sadness comes, seemingly out of nowhere. That's the thing about people who are loved. Their memories keep. They're never too far away. They come to us in a song lyric or a line of movie dialogue or on a long walk. What was it they always said? Oh, that's right. And they always had to have it a certain way. So maybe we'll do it that way and laugh a little in memoriam. Be with us, Holy One, as we grieve over the empty chairs at our table. We light a candle and say an extra prayer, and we trust with sure and certain hope that you had them before we let them go. Amen.
This year, we're lighting candles for 7 members of this congregation who have died since we did this service at the end of last October. For Earl Dyer, Jack Ferguson, Shirley Maley, Dorothy Maxey, Sandy Scott, Carrie Smith, Lauren Zumbrun, will you rise in body or in spirit and join me in singing hymn number 336, All My Memories of Love. So I spent 5 months this spring with the Seven Oaks Unitarians in Bessels Green, just south of London in the UK, staying at their old meeting house while I was on sabbatical here. It's an experience I'll spend the rest of my career thinking about. You've heard quite a bit about it if you've come the last few months. But one of the images that will stick with me for a very long time from this spring was the experience of living at the church, surrounded by the church's graveyard. You see, we were staying at a residence attached to a 17th century church. And it being old and it being England, that meant that our backyard was the church's cemetery. Unitarians couldn't be buried in consecrated ground for much of the time that that church existed, so they had their own churchyard around the Unitarian church. So a couple hundred graves dating from about 1730 to 2019 surrounded the church and house. So for 5 months, every time I would get up and make breakfast, I'd be making eggs and pouring coffee, and I'd look up and there's the graveyard right there as a reminder. That's such a powerful image to me because it is one of the things that religion does fundamentally. It's one of the first things that we do as a religious organization. To live in this world, the Unitarian minister Greg Ward writes, we must accept that one day we will have to die. To love what is alive, we must accept having to lose what we've made precious through our care. How can I say it? The poet Albert Huffstickler writes, the way to get over a life is to die. The scripture says, for everything there is a season, a time to live and a time to die. So this question, this knowledge that we are alive and that we will die, and that everyone we know and everyone we love, that is also true of, defines what it means for us to be human. And even more than that, we know that the deeper our love for those around us, the more we open ourselves up to grief, the more when we light these candles, it's not just an intellectual exercise in the fall. There's a poem by the recently deceased Louise Gluck that has been on my mind this week. She writes, in your extended absence, you permit me use of earth, anticipating some return on investment. I must report failure in my assignment, principally regarding the tomato plants. I think I should not be encouraged to grow tomatoes. Or if I am, you should withhold the heavy rains, the cold nights that come so often here, while other regions get 12 weeks of summer. All this belongs to you. On the other hand, I planted the seeds. I watched the first shoots like wings tearing the soil, and it was my heart broken by the blight, the black spot so quickly multiplying in the rows. I doubt you have a heart in our understanding of that term. You who do not discriminate between the dead and the living, who are, in consequence, immune to foreshadowing. You may not know how much terror we bear. The spotted leaf, the red leaves of the maple falling even in August in early darkness. I am responsible for these vines. Life is a constant pull between the things that we hold close, whether they are our loved ones or tomato vines, and the knowledge that we will lose everything that we hold close, or they will lose us. Tomato plants, loved ones, the universality of loss is part of the human condition. This summer, we told the story of Kisagotami, the Buddhist parable about a woman who loses her son and goes to the Buddha for comfort. And the Buddha tells her, absolutely, I can give you comfort, bring me a mustard seed. But that mustard seed must come from a house that has not known grief. And so the story goes that Kisagotami goes to each of her neighbors, and each of her neighbors says, yes, of course you can have a mustard seed, but this is a house that has known grief. And through understanding that, the story says, she attains some level of enlightenment. So how we respond to loss is important. How we respond to death is important. It's one of the things that defines faith and the differences between different faiths. For the Buddha, the answer was acceptance and detachment. Knowing things are impermanent begins to free us from the cycle of birth and death. They would say to Louis Gluck, your tomatoes are impermanent, and acknowledging that reality should lessen the terror. At Seven Oaks, like many, many churches, names are carved in stone surrounding the church as a way to remember. They were old Universalists there. They called them Free Baptists in England, but they believed that each person buried in that cemetery was going to their heavenly reward, but they wrote their names. Here, every time I walk from my office down on that side of the building to here, pass a memorial tree with the names of everybody that has died and left a memorial to this congregation. And when I started, I didn't know those names. I never met the Hansons. I know stories of them. I've heard their names many, many times. But now, after 7 years, I walk past that and I look at it almost every day. And it's now dozens of people that I have known, that I have sat with, that I know as part of this community, that are not lost. We didn't lose them. They died. And so what do we do? For Unitarians, for this congregation, we tell stories. In Eternity, Marilyn Robinson writes, this world would be Troy, and all that passed here would be the epic of the universe, the ballad that they sing in the streets. And so when we have a memorial service at this congregation, we don't focus on what happens after death. We tell stories about the person who has lived, and in doing so bring some part of them into the room and introduce them to new people. This is how I know the Hansons, not because I met them, but through the stories that I have heard from so many people here. This congregation was not always called the Unitarian Church of Lincoln. For over 50 years, it was All Souls Unitarian. All Souls was for a time a popular name for Unitarian and Universalist churches across the country. There's All Souls in New York, in Washington, D.C. The Unitarian Church in Kansas City is still called All Souls. It's a nod to our Universalist heritage, but it also says something interesting about what we hold up in these places. All Souls does not recognize a single exalted person or idea, like a St. Mark's or a Trinity or a Grace Chapel. St. Martin in the Field, that's a fun one. Nor does it recognize some small subset of the devout. It's not All Saints Church. All Souls recognizes all that have come before in all their complicated history, and commits the church to support all who will follow. It is an intergenerational name, a Universalist name. And so in part because of that history and because of that name that we have held here, about every other year we set aside a Sunday in late October or early November to name the members who have died in the last year, since we have done this service last, and to recognize the universality of loss and of love, to reconnect with ancestors, both of birth or of choice. Our Universalist forebears would have spoken about the great cloud of witnesses that surrounds us and informs our choices in the world. I don't know about the literal truth of that. But let me tell you a story about how that feels for me. Last year when we did this service, my grandmother had just died a month or two before. And growing up, my parents were undergraduates when I was born at Michigan State University. The first 4 years of my life, I lived in student housing at Michigan State. And so my grandparents were a surrogate set of parents in a lot of ways. And so that loss, the last time we did this service, I had a hard time getting through the service. And I could just say the name Sue Powell. I couldn't say much more than that. But after a while, I started going back through the conversations that we had recorded in the last 2 or 3 years of her life. She had Alzheimer's, so we were trying to record as much of her story as we could in those last years. And I found this gem, talking about growing up as the daughter of a Methodist minister in rural Illinois. This is her telling the story to her grandkids 60 years after it happened. I can remember my mother always telling me, "Now you're the Methodist minister's kid, so I don't want you misbehaving." Which, when I was in high school, I misbehaved. And, direct quote, not a lot, but I would take the car and I would speed even through town, even with the cops chasing me. And I can remember crossing the railroad tracks just as I saw a train coming, and I knew the cops couldn't follow me. So I got away. They didn't follow me, but they probably knew who I was, because they probably had my dad's, his license plate. Oh, I know who that is. But they, the cops, didn't say anything about it. Sue Powell died. She's not lost. We did not misplace her. My family misses her an awful lot. It is as final as the word sounds. But every time I see my own preacher's kid acting both like she has to be an example to the community and occasionally raising hell in front of the entire church while I am trying to run a somber service, I remember that story of her great-grandmother skipping across train tracks to get away from the cops. And I remember that Sue Powell's story didn't end when she died. So you all have these people in your life. There are also complicated relationships with people who have died. And some of us have ancestors that we are born into. Some of us have ancestors that we choose. Some of us have ancestors that we marry into. Any number of different ways you carry these stories. You do carry them. And so for this morning, as we start to draw this to a close, think of someone whose story you're carrying forward in your life. In a good way. We're going to talk about complicated heritages next week. We'll have time for that, I promise. But for today, who is the story that you hold dear to you and that's reflected in the best moments that you have now? And then, we haven't done this for a while, but we're going to build a cairn So what I'm going to ask you to do as this next song plays is to come forward, take a stone, take a Sharpie, and write, or attempt to write, because it doesn't work very well, the name of who you're carrying with you, and place it in a stack. Over the next 3 weeks, we're going to be talking about heritage. It's the theme for November in our Soul Matters packet and in our worship. And as we have that conversation, we're going to leave these names present in the sanctuary. The best of our ancestors, the people that we hold in love, the people who are our heritage and who we pass on to the next generation. So we'll play one more song, and as that plays, please come up. Please try and write a name if you can. If not, just place a stone, and the names will be there in spirit. So AV, if you could cue up that song, and we'll invite anybody who wants to come forward. All right. Our closing words this morning are a responsive reading written by the Reverend Kathleen McTeague. It is number 200. Aha. Let me start this over. Our closing words are a responsive reading by the Reverend Kathleen McTeague. It is number 721 in the gray hymnal. I'll read the Roman font if you read the italic font. If you're reading along in the hymnal, you'll see it ends with a ritual of naming folks who we carry with us. We have just done that, so we will close out with the last line of the reading. In the struggles we choose for ourselves, in the ways we move forward in our lives and bring our world forward with us, we share a history with those lives. We belong to the same motion. Those who lived before us, who struggled for justice and suffered injustice before us, have not melted into the dust, have not disappeared. Their words remind us and call us back to ourselves. Their courage and love evoke our own. We, the living, carry them with us. We are their voices, their hands, and their hearts. Amen. That ends our service. We're going to skip past the last hymn because we are well over time. Thank you all for your presence. We'll carry these names forward over the next month as we talk about heritage in all its joy and its complication. So with that, go in peace and amen. I will say, if you do want to talk about the congregation's budget and where we are at the pledge drive, stick around for 5 minutes after the service in this room. Jason and I will chat about it. We didn't want to try and shoehorn that into a service of remembrance, but we do want to give an update. So if you want to stay for that, please do. Otherwise, go in peace, and thank you for being here. Oh, thank you. Yes. I forgot to say this online, but if you are in the live stream, we'll answer questions from the live stream as well if you have any. Stick around for a moment. All right. That is wireless. It should be labeled on it.
Wireless 2, handheld 2. Test 1, 2. Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone that was able to stay. We just want to give an update here on our annual giving campaign and the budget. Yep. That's fine. They may have coffee, so.
This is not going to be a long update,
it's
but
not.
it is.
Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody who's been engaged in the annual giving campaign. This has been a really wonderful experience for our church, to be totally honest. And thank you so much. If you've already done your pledge form and submitted it, thank you. If you still haven't, you still have till October 31st. So thank you again for being so generous with both your time, talent, and treasures. We can't do this without your engagement, so thank you. But our budget is coming together. It really is. It's coming together. We're going to be here October 31st as we close the annual giving campaign. We'll look at the final numbers and then start balancing the budget. I think it's going to be a good process. I think, and when we come to our congressional meetings after the Board of Trustees, congregational meetings, I'm sorry. My tongue does not like that word. Yes, we are more streamlined than Congress. But when our Board of Trustees reviews it and then we'll vote on it, we'll definitely have a great presentation for you all of what the numbers look like and what it all entails. So we have great leadership in our Board of Trustees, and I think it's going to be a good process all in all.
All right. So I just got the most recent numbers from Wendy, who came in. So here's where we're at right now. In 2023, the congregation's budget was about $500,000, right? So that was the budget that we just cycled through. So far this year, we've received about $392,000 in pledging. Now, the first thing to say is that is a higher pledging number than we have seen in the 7 years that I have been here. That's incredible. It's it's around a 10% jump up in pledges from last year. It is also true that we did not ask for, we're not asking for supplemental one-time gifts this year. That was a big part of our budget last year. And so our total projected income line is down somewhere in the neighborhood of $450,000. And our projected expenses are higher than that. They were $500,000 last year. There's been a lot of inflation in the previous year. We just found out this week, for instance, that our health insurance premiums for all our staff are going up 12.5% this year. So that's where we're at right now, is looking at that gap and figuring out how we'll make it work. So that's what we want you to know, because we don't want to surprise anybody when we come at town halls in 2 weeks. Other than that, I think at this point, that's mostly the update.
That's update.
The pledge campaign is open through the end of October. So the 31st is Tuesday. Any pledges we receive by Tuesday, we will put into the budget. Anything that we get after that, we really can't, because we get into this thing where we're trying to adjust the budget right up through board meetings and congregational meetings, and it just becomes impossible. We really had that happen last year, and it really was challenging operationally to be continually adjusting those numbers. So we're going to have a pretty hard cutoff on October 31st. So with that, why don't we open it up for questions?
Questions. I have a question already.
My daughter happens to be on the board,
Indeed.
and so she said, did you submit your pledge? And I said, no, I don't submit a pledge because my pledge rolls over.
Yes.
And she said, well, you should check on Realm and see if that shows you having a pledge. And I did look on Realm, and it didn't show me as having a pledge. So I filled one out, like within the last week or so. And I just wonder if there are others who think they're being counted, who perhaps are not being counted. So I wanted to raise that.
Wendy, do you want to take that, actually? Because that's,
Here, Wendy.
We have a second microphone. And if anybody in chat does have a question, we are monitoring on our YouTube channel. So if you do, go and type it in. We'll make sure you answer it. Go ahead, Wendy.
Okay, am I good? Okay. As to your pledges, the pledge campaign in Realm is open. People can self-enter their pledges there. It's sometimes a tricky process. So any of the pledges that are submitted by the other methods, which is the online one or the paper ones, I will be entering in mass in January. So if you have any questions, you can give me a call or text me or email me, and I can let you know what I have down for your pledge, or if you want to change your pledge, I can adjust them. We've had a lot of people that have actually been sending in adjustments to their pledges, and it's been nice. But the pledge campaign in Realm for 2024 is just for convenience at this point. It doesn't have the bulk of the entries in it.
so, right. So if you are a person who rolls over their pledge, and we assume this, right? If we have not heard from you at this point in the pledge campaign, and you've pledged the last couple of years, we assume that you carry over the same pledge. We are still assuming that. It just isn't showing up in Realm yet because we do all of that data entry in Realm in January. Right. It is showing up in our,
Exactly.
in the numbers that I just read off. It's in there. But those numbers are in a spreadsheet, not yet entered into Realm.
But we do encourage you, if you are planning on rolling over, we appreciate that. But if you let us know, we that's the thing, we assume that's what you're going to do. So be nice to, if you can engage, if you're going to say, do the same thing, it's always nice to have that on the books right before we do that. Or if you're looking to update, whatever is an increase or decrease, we'd like to know that as well. I mean, it's important that we have accurate numbers. As a treasurer, I like to have as accurate numbers as possible. So, if you are rolling over, we appreciate that. We really do. But if you can make sure it's as up to date as possible, that's helpful for us as well. So that's what we
And
ask.
as an incentive to that, even if you are rolling over your pledge, leaving it the same as last year,
Ooh, right.
adjusting it up or down, as long as you're doing some process where you're interacting with the pledge, you get to have one of the fine coffee mugs. See Oscar, for example. So, basically, turn in a pledge, whatever kind, you get a mug.
Church of PBS.
And there's already been enough interest in mugs that we will almost certainly have to order more mugs. So we can say that if you are one of the next 60 people to turn in a pledge form, you will get a special, very limited edition, first edition of the Unitarian Church of Lincoln run of mugs.
Oh, we have a question. Let me come to you.
To get your mug, stop at the office. All you have to do is sign your piece of paper and grab your mug.
So the total budget includes not just pledges, but other things like rental income.
Yes.
What is the outlook on that?
It's largely staying the same with rental income. Rental income's decreased a little bit. Auction is in flux, but it'll be similar to the last year. The biggest change in non-pledge income is those one-time donations that we are not asking for this year. That's about $60,000 from last year that isn't in the budget this time. Other than that, it's staying mostly the same. And that's a relatively small percentage of our actual income. Giving from congregants, either through pledging or through memorial gifts or any number of other things, is about 85% of our income. So the other 15% is staying about the same.
I know last year we did make, and I think if you may not have heard, we were concerned that we were going to lose our tenant, the Montessori school. We had mentioned that in the congregational meetings last year. That has changed. They're staying, and so that's exciting that they're staying for. Go ahead. I think there's a caveat here a little bit. Maybe?
They're staying through May.
Yes.
They're staying through May. So they're staying into this coming year. We do also have another renter lined up who will take over for them when they leave. It'll be a little bit less rental income, but we've got a plan in place so that doesn't just sort of fall off a cliff when Bluestem leaves. Alan had a question back here.
Alan,
We're going to give a microphone because people want to listen.
The live stream
hear you
doesn't
on the
pick
live
up
stream.
anything that's not on a mic.
Live stream. Well, two questions. One is, what's at risk if the budget doesn't surge between now and November 1st? The other thing is, I'm aware of the new state law that allows tax money to flow to private schools. Is the Montessori school here eligible for that? And could they be bribed?
Let me answer your second question first. Possibly they're eligible for it. We have a joint board member who's on the Bluestem board and our board who says that they're not, so they're not. And no is a general rule of thumb. We do not try and bribe Montessori schools. That's been a good relationship, and it's been a relationship that that I think we can celebrate and acknowledge that school has grown bigger since they've been here. And as they've grown bigger, they've rented more and more of our space. And we're sort of at a point now where they really need more space than we can reasonably rent them, which is why they're looking for somewhere else to be. And that's a good thing. We should celebrate that. Like, a partner that we have is having lots of success, and we will wish them well and find somebody that can use our space as well. Was the other question?
The
was
answer to your
what's
first question was
Yeah.
at stake.
Do you want to take that one?
Everything's at stake. Let me put it that way. We are going to balance this budget with what we have, and everything's at stake. So you will see the numbers come our congregational meeting as well as you. And by the way, the Board of Trustees meeting is always open to the public. So if you want to come to the Board of Trustees meeting here in November, we encourage you to come. This is an important thing for the church. But be honest with you, everything's at stake.
So, Jason, refresh me now. We just talked about 15% of the income comes from rentals, et cetera. So, right now what are we right now, and then how much do we need to get us up to wherever it is 15%?
Well,
Less. I mean, how much are we short?
that's a hard question to answer.
Okay.
And here's why it's hard. Right now, I can tell you the number for all of the requests that came in, right? Every committee, every staff member, everything that changed for insurance, health insurance, and insuring our building, which also went up about 10% this year, fun. All of that put together was about 570.
Oh.
Now, that's not what our budget is actually going to be, because we are always going to look at those numbers and figure out what to prioritize within them. But the question of how much we have to prioritize with them depends on that other number. So that 570 number, it's never been in a budget that was passed. It's never been in sort of a full budget. It's just the sum total of all of the requests. So that's what makes that question hard to answer. As a rule of thumb, inflation rates were about 10% over the last year. And so if we kept everything even, we would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 550,000, right? That's what our expenses, if we did everything the same as we did last year, would look like. That's a big gap between 450 and 550.
So
So-
you're saying, I just want to make sure I understand. You're saying that with the rollover pledges, for all the pledges we had last year, plus the increases that people have given,
Yep.
we're still at, what are we at now? Say it again.
392,000 pledges, total income, we're looking at about 460, I think it would.
Less than 450.
450,
So,
yeah,
So
450.
we're talking about over $100,000.
Yeah, we are.
Whew.
But, I mean, it's the reality of the economy that we are in. I mean, it really is. And it's what we deal with, and it's okay. This church is accustomed to this. It's happened before. We've gone through tough budget processes before. We're going to go through it again. And as what Oscar said last week, this budget process will help us going forward, because we don't have to have a pandemic. Hopefully, we'll never not have one again. But right now, we're looking at this as our new normal and how we're going to grow from here. I mean, it's not easy to look at these numbers. I've looked at them for the past months. But it is encouraging from the congregation. Like I said, we've had people increase their pledges more than they ever have. That says something about our church. It really does. It says something about our community. And so seeing that is great. It really is. I'm so happy about the engagement we have. And I think we're in a place to keep growing, like from where we have been to where we're going to go in the future. I think this is just a turning point we're having to take.
Yeah. And I'll add to that what I said last week, which is that this is not a shortfall that is in any way the fault of anyone in this congregation, right? Stewardship drives have gone great. And the last 3 years, we've had similar shortfalls in all of the last 3 years, and we've chosen to take money out of reserves. We've chosen to do supplemental asks from the congregation. We've gotten some big sort of angel donors who have come in. That has been great. That got us through 3 years of crisis budgets that were COVID budgets. But we cannot keep doing crisis budgets indefinitely. So it sounds like a big change, right, from the conversation that we're having now to the conversation that we had a year ago at this time. But it truly is that we're choosing that this year is not going to be the year that we sort of continue crisis response in budgeting.
One of the things, just as a congregant, that is in my mind, I know from my work in a different nonprofit, the kind of precipitous drop in participation that happened there,
Yeah.
and how long it's taking just to get back to level, forget growing.
Yep.
I would just like to know, what do you see as being needed going forward, not this budget year? Is it membership? What do you think is going to contribute most to sort of moving us back in a forward direction?
I think it's, I look at personally for me, I look at membership. Oscar's made it clear in the past couple months and sermons as he's been back. COVID did hurt our congregational membership. I mean, we've had probably a net loss of congregational membership over the years. We're not an evangelical church. We don't go out and speak and go evangelize people to come to Unitarian Church. We're not, but we do need to show what our community is to people and to people, so we can get new blood in this church. Let them know this is a place for people that are searching for their, our souls matter. It really does. And that's, we work hard at transforming lives. We try to live in our vision. We work hard at social justice. But there are people that maybe are searching for a place. We've had a ton of people come into these doors over the past couple months and checking us out. Oscar said that over this past next couple of year, we have an election year. We have other things going on in this culture, in the society we live in. They're going to walk in this door. And, we want to show that this is a home for them. And maybe they'll stay. Maybe they'll start participating. We don't know. We hope that's what happens. We're going to be, over the years with the stewardship committee and whatnot, we're going to find avenues to make sure our basis is confident and stable. Make sure people are volunteered and plugged into the church so they can see that this is a stable church and this is a stable place to be at for our community. That is going to show the community this is a place to come. And I think that's going to be really important. And yes, if they come, maybe they'll give. And we'll see as they come. But really, I think it's about membership because we have lost a net loss over the past couple of years because of COVID, because of what people moving away and stuff like that. It happens.
And in some ways, there's two conversations, right? There's the conversation about finances and membership. But people don't usually join churches in order to give money to churches, for better or worse. But people do get involved in churches when they get really into what the church is doing in the world, right? So one of the things we're doing this spring, the Board of Trustees has set up a task force to revise the mission and vision for the congregation. And that's really going to be an attempt to say, all right, can we articulate what is the Unitarian Church of Lincoln about in the world right now? And then one of the things that we'll have to do is say that out in public, out loud. I mean, we get people that come in that get excited every time we're out in public with our t-shirts, or I go on a radio. I was on Amy Miller's radio show, right? And somebody randomly heard it and sent me an email like, never heard of the Unitarian Church of Lincoln. What's that about? If we're honest that this is a place of transformation and uniting reason and spiritual experience, that's a thing that a lot of churches don't do. And I think there are a lot of people that are looking for that. But that needs to be everybody in the congregation out there in the world saying, this is a place I go to on Sunday. I'm not trying to convert you, but I am saying it's important in my life. And if you're lonely or you need connection or if you're struggling with a loss that you've had in the last year, maybe this is a place where you could come on Sunday morning. And we're the greenest church in the city. Yeah.
Go ahead, Evelyn.
I'm wanting to go back to a point that you made before and just sort of clarify it in my head. It sounds like what we're trying to do is, rather than the crisis budget continuing, is we're doing what I would call a reset. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Okay. And just to make our budget a little more in tune with the money that we take in, as opposed to trying to get more all the time. I really like that idea because I found the constantly asking for more sort of frustrating. But I think that's great. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, okay.
I wanted to just interject to the conversations. I just haven't heard it yet, but yeah, like I think we're looking to reset where we are, but right before the pandemic, we had 2 services and the church had scaled up to that. And we didn't ever scale back down. And, like, there weren't that many people here today. And the children's rooms are not bursting full of kids, and it's time to reset. But I will say in that resetting, and I'm seeing this, I'm in all these different conversations as a board member, but like the people who are here, we're so committed. Like most of us are increasing our pledge. Most of us are volunteering a lot. Most of us are just like really, really into what we're doing here. And I feel really hopeful that we are well on our way to go back to where we were, but we just aren't there, and it's probably time to reconcile that. And it just is what it is, maybe.
There's, Ananda had a question, and then Jackie Egan had a question as well.
What she was saying about the children's program is something I've noticed. There have been several weeks where my kids have been the only one in their class,
Yeah.
especially my eldest and my youngest. I don't know if that's the most efficient use of church resources, and like having 2 volunteers just to chit chat with my high schooler might, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
maybe those volunteers could do something more useful. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a point to like having mentorship, but perhaps, you know, I don't know how to resolve that. But the other thing is when I don't come, when I can't come, because if one of my kids is sick, I'm a single mom, I can't come if one of my kids is sick. I feel like such a burden to come because I don't want, you know, it to be only someone else's kid because I didn't show up that week. So.
Yeah, I mean, your question is a good chance to talk about, you know, again, that this is not unique to the Unitarian Church of Lincoln. So I'll say 2 things. The first is continuing on the budget. Yes, we had that big sort of jump in programming in 2017. I actually ran the numbers yesterday, and our 2017 budget and our 2023 budget that we just ended are within like 2% of each other when adjusted for inflation. Yep. So this is the Bureau of Labor Statistics has an inflation calculator, so you can put in what is $10 in July of 2017 and December of 2022. And it'll spit out a percent, and then you just run the percent on what our budget was back then and what it is now. So while the number has gone up, our actual things that we are spending, effectively it has not. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, Ananda, your point is really, there were numbers that the UUA put out about a month ago that in the last 3 years, overall, over the country, religious education participation has dropped about 40%. 40% in 3 years across the Unitarian Universalist Association. So that's what we're seeing here. But much like some of this budget stuff, I do want to keep saying, like, these are systemic issues that we are trying to get ahead of, but they are not anything that's being caused by somebody at the Unitarian Church of Lincoln. They are big cultural shifts that we are trying our best to ride. Which also means that there's a lot of people trying to figure out how to do it, right? Because every DRE in the country is trying to figure out what happened to religious education during the pandemic and how do we get it back. Chelsea's in a credentialing program now and meeting monthly with a mentor and these are the conversations happening nationally. It's like, what just happened and how do we structure our programs now to respond to this moment?
I looked on the website, and the congregational meeting is December 10th. That's what I always want to know. What do I put on my calendar? The town halls are November 19th and December 3rd, according to the website.
Yes.
Thank you, Jackie. I was going to tell this as well. And like I said, our Board of Trustees meeting is open to the public. It is Tuesday, November 7th. It's also available on Zoom. So we usually have a Zoom as well. But if you want to come, it is open to the public, is my understanding.
Yes.
Yes. So.
What was that meeting?
Board of Trustees business meeting.
Any other questions?
And we have, if you haven't had pledge form, there's pledge form up here, plus a mug. So, everyone online, thank you so much for being there, for being staying and viewing. Appreciate your participation, but I think we're done.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you all.